Hello, dear friends. Roy and PJ, so great to see you today. Thank you so much for spending the time with me for this wonderful conversation. First, I'd like to just begin by reading your bio. Roy and PJ Hirabayashi, co-founder and artistic director emeritus of San Jose Taiko, celebrate over 53 years of playing taiko. For their years of community building and expanding the art form of taiko through SJT, the National Endowment of the Awards awarded them the National Heritage Fellowship, the nation's highest honor in the folk and traditional arts in 2011. Roy and PJ have also received the SV Creates Legacy Laureate and the San Jose Taiko's San Jose Arts Commission's Cornerstone and Arts Award, and were recognized in 2014 with the JACL Japanese American of the Biennium Award. They are proud recipients of the 2024 Taproot Fellowship from the Alliance of California Traditional Arts. Roy and PJ perform, compose, conduct workshops internationally. PJ's current project is Taiko Peace, an extension of her peace ambassadorship with Shift Network's Summer of Peace, Karen Armstrong's Charter for Compassion. Roy is active in the national arts community and in 2024 was appointed to the California Arts Council. Wow. Alrighty. So we love to go all the way back to the beginning, 1970s. And why don't you take us back to the beginning of your journey before creating San Jose Taiko? Where were you in your life when this cultural work became important to you?
Well, I think I'll start. In the late 60s and early 70s, there was the whole anti-war movement going on throughout our country. It was the beginning of the Asian American movement and also the beginning of ethnic studies on the different campuses, the college campuses. And that's when I started. I came down to go to San Jose State in 1969, and all of that was happening. The campus was in uproar for the anti-war movement. People were rallying to try to get ethnic studies classes going for San Jose State. The Asian American Studies started in 1970. And so once I started, when I came down, I came down as a science major. Quickly discovered there was so much more than that going on here. And also realizing because of the things around the anti-war movement, also with ethnic studies, just the question of identity. Who was I as an Asian American, or more importantly, as a Japanese American? I grew up in Oakland, so I'm basically Bay Area born. But it's in the neighborhood I grew up in Oakland was I like to identify as East Oakland, which was predominantly a Black community when I was growing up. And so coming down and to San Jose, it was just a different experience of just seeing everything else that was happening and meeting people, peers, other students, that were really involved. And we were all just curious at the same time, about identity, trying to find out how to best, go into that to see what that meant. But also discovering there were communities within our own identities, like Japantown here in San Jose, that were existing, that were needing help, and that people that were living there, the first generation Issei, were being neglected. So how do we support them? So it was more than just an academic, endeavor for me. It was really looking at how can I be involved in community. And that's really kind of the start for me here in San Jose.
So my background, very similar from the Asian American movement part, but I was born as a baby boomer after World War II in San Rafael, California. And it was during public school that I was pointed out as being totally different. Hardly any Asian in my school, So it was physically, why do you look like that? And definitely bullied without knowing what bullying was, but not being selected to be played with. And, there was something that, gosh, how do I become accepted? And just really thought something's wrong with me. So the self-esteem factor was very poor. And so it wasn't until anti-war movement, and that's like taking me all the way to senior year of high school, questioning the morality of being in Vietnam, and also other friends, males that were being drafted. And so, yeah, that was a big question. And at the same time, as Roy said, Asian American studies, ethnic studies was becoming more visible, starting to question, who am I? And there was no classes or any type of curriculum that pointed to my history. So we were realizing this because we were part of designing Asian American studies back in the 70s, what to incorporate into the curriculum. And it was during those years, it's like, oh, my people. And realizing that what I thought, if I go to Japan, I'll find my people. And when I went to Japan to find my people, it was the same feeling of being marginalized. People in Japan, what are you? And same questions. I come back home after 1 year in Japan, and I'm still dealing with identity. And if it were not for Japantown, San Jose, and coming to become a grad student in urban planning, I have to say, Roy had a lot to do with introducing me to this possibility of coming to San Jose State to enter the urban planning program. And of course, he was also very, was very active in helping establish Asian American studies on San Jose State campus. So there was a marriage of interest, of urban planning, of ethnic studies, of community, physical community that I never experienced before here in San Jose, Japantown, and finding later that it's only one of 3 Japantowns related to the U.S. So along with all this, I think it was also helping me establish that there's nothing concrete for me to jump in and, oh, I want to do that. It's like I had to kind of figure out what is there that I'm truly passionate about, and how do I integrate this into something that I'm still evolving, questioning. But the point that kind of focused me was community organizing. And community organizing during ethnic studies, during anti-war movement, it's like we cannot continue to protest out in the streets. We must go back to our communities to see what is happening in our communities, because there's war happening in our communities, and how do we address that? Community service. Power to the people.
Yes, yes. So from the very, very beginning, going all the way back to the 1970s, lots of questioning regarding your self-identity, community identity, cultural identity. Even though the two of you grew up in, you can say two different backgrounds, but asking yourselves the same questions as many Asian Americans, many folks around that time were asking the same questions. And then, what is my community? Who is my community? That's what I'm hearing. And then around that time, two of you gave birth to San Jose Taiko. And could you tell me a little bit about why did you decide to start this group? Roy, maybe you could talk a little bit about being part of all three first taiko groups in North America.
Sure. Yes, so San Jose Taiko, we were the third group to begin here in North America. So the first was in San Francisco, the San Francisco Taiko Dojo. And the second was in Los Angeles, which started in Taiko Dojo in San Francisco in 1968 and Kinata Taiko in Los Angeles in 1969. And so we started to organize San Jose Taiko in 1973. And as Peter was mentioning, community organizing was really kind of an important thing for us and what we're getting involved in. I had the opportunity to start to live and work in Japantown here as a student. And one of the, kind of opportunities I had was to work at the San Jose Buddhist Church as sort of a youth director for the temple. And the ministers there wanted to see how can we bring more younger people back into the temple to be involved with the church. And so the youngest minister there at the time was Reverend Hiroshi Abiko. When I started working there, he says, one cool idea is to use the Japanese drum, the taiko, to start a class and just help, maybe folks would be interested in coming in to participate. The group in Los Angeles, Kinata Taiko, was doing this, and Reverend Abiko knew the minister there and some of the key members who started that group. And so he says, there's a resource there. Maybe we could learn how they started, and it'd be great just to begin. So I thought, again, with this community organizing hat on, I says, well, that's really cool. Let's try that. I knew what taiko was as a drum, but didn't know anything about the art form as an art form, or as a potential art form, actually, as I should say. And so I said, I'm willing to jump in there to try to help organize. I recruited another friend, Dean Miyakusu, and the three of us with Reverend Abiko, we contacted the Kinata Taiko group and asked them, how did you get started? And Reverend Mas Kodani said, he showed us, he explained how they were able to take a wine barrel and put a cowhide on it, and that was their version of the Japanese taiko. They invented that idea, basically. Otherwise, we would have to go to Japan. Taiko are carved out of a single piece of wood. It'd just be very expensive, and we wouldn't be able to just financially be able to do that. And so with this idea, wow, we could just get wine barrels and make our own taiko here. California has a lot of wine barrels, And so we just jumped into that. And so we had to make our own drums from the very beginning, and in that way, and just figure out how to make the drums, even the stands and what they sit on. And with that, once we got started, we realized, well, we don't even have anyone, the three of us, that's really a taiko teacher. None of us have done this. But we said, we're just going to start playing, just have fun. And Reverend Abiko, he had lived in Japan quite a while, so he probably influenced the best about, festive music coming from Japan and rhythm patterns and different sounds. And so he started to introduce some real basic festival drumming sounds for us to start playing.
What are the sounds, but not like knowing how to play?
Right. There was no form to what we're doing, and no organization to how we're very community-based, so anyone that wanted to try, we're naturally focusing on the younger people, but we're inviting just people in. Anyone could come in and just try. There was no rules or everything. Just walk in, here's some sticks, get on the drum, And so it was just people just started to be attracted to the sound. That's how we got going.
Yeah, wow. Wine barrel, that's very interesting. Since San Jose Taiko has been around 5 decades, could you describe sort of the beginning years? First, you spoke about the very, very beginning moments, right? Maybe the first decade. Who came to San Jose Taiko? Who were you wanting to attract? Your own evolution and you have spoken to me about the importance of recognizing taiko as a true legitimate art form. So maybe in the beginning years, first decade, to how did San Jose Taiko evolve?
Should I go ahead?
Sure.
Gosh, 10 years is like just a drop in the bucket, at least reflect. But it was quite a challenge, but exciting because we didn't know what it was that we were really creating. We knew already that we were being told, that's not Japanese taiko from Japan, because we made our own taiko drums out of oak wine barrels. And then also, like Roy said, the intention was to bring young people back into the temple with a new activity, with taiko. And there was, I guess, for a bit of time that the kids came to do it. But then Roy also having experience of playing with other bands, as he was at school, had a lot of friends that were musicians and kind of opened it up. Hey, you want to just come check out, taiko here at church? And so they came, and I think perhaps their musical, intuition and talents were a little bit intimidating for the young kids. And I think they just started to drop out. But here we had these young people our age who also were going through the same identity question, and also having connection to the community, but not very solidly. Like we felt that during those early years, it's like, let's jam. We don't have that much information to bank on. Oh, let's use these LPs. Let's listen to the authentic music from Japan. But our musicians were like very talented composers. And there was a lot of R&B, a lot of jazz, a lot of influence that they brought to rhythm. And so how to acknowledge what are these Japanese folk songs, or what Reverend Abiko had shared with us. It was just a template to refer to. But we were creating our music. And at the very get-go, because we were told, you're not Japanese taiko from Japan, and you're just beer barrel drummers. And it's like, wow, we felt so, Mom was insulted, but it's like, we're not doing it, we're bastardizing taiko, But at the very get-go, we said, well, we cannot become Japanese taiko because we're not born in Japan. We're not learning directly from anybody, and that we have to acknowledge that what we're creating musically is definitely our expression. So we said from the get-go, San Jose Taiko is creating our own music, but inspired by Japanese.
John.
Thank you so much. And speaking of acknowledgement, I know San Jose Taiko, the two of you have done very, very significant work in, I think the word you use, Roy, was like legitimizing taiko as an art form. And could you share a little bit, and I think that started from the very beginning, right? Especially in the first 2 decades, what did the two of you do specifically to ensure that this particular cultural art form, and Roy, you also said that not only taiko, right, sort of other cultural art forms were not deemed legitimate in this sort of Western society. And could you tell me a little bit about some of the activities you did to, education program, educating funders and so forth? Yeah.
Sure. To, I guess, frame it a little bit, the first 3 taiko groups that came, again, San Francisco Taiko has come really with the Japanese taiko influence, the festival drumming. And then Kinano was based in a Buddhist temple, so they were a Buddhist taiko group. And so when we started San Jose Taiko, we were coming, as PJ was alluding to, very much an Asian American or Japanese American perception of why we play taiko or what was important for us. So, excuse me, from that, with that in mind, we really wanted to identify ourselves as a Japanese American taiko group. And so it was really important to really kind of frame ourselves, also being here in Japantown, to really acknowledge those points that we're from Japantown, San Jose, and then we're Japanese Americans. And as PJ was talking about, we were not really well recognized as being a Japanese taiko group from Japan. Well, the Japanese didn't recognize us as a taiko group because of that. And so when we started, though, as an art form in the community here in Japantown, it was really difficult to go out to attract funders or people to support us outside of the community because they didn't understand or know who we were. And so we really had to emphasize the fact that we needed to create our own program in order to do something like that. We felt it was, we realized really quickly that in order to really let more people know about what we're doing, we needed to create an education program, an outreach program. And so we started to go into schools locally, do school assemblies. And it was like just like a 40-minute program. We go into schools and just talking about the drum and the music and who we were, and try to emphasize again that we're Japanese American from Japantown, San Jose. As the group grew and the art form for us grew also musically, we were able to start touring nationally. And the school programs that we toured with us became a really important part of our outreach also. So as presenters, we're starting to present us across the country at universities or, public performing arts centers. We were always asking that we do school shows in the theater where they would bus the kids in. Sometimes they would take us out to the schools themselves, but our preference, since we're going there to do a concert and we were set up to do that, we had designed this shorter school show for them to be able to bring students in. And it gave the students the opportunity to see a theater production in a theater, but also for us to educate them what taiko is all about in that way. And also hitting a much larger audience than going to a school where maybe there's just a couple hundred kids, and some of these theaters would be busting in 1,500 or 1,800 kids. And so that became a really important part of our mission. And presenters were starting to recognize us in that way. There were other groups from Japan starting to tour, like Kodo is the main one that was beginning to tour across the country. But since they're Japanese speaking, they could not do the educational outreach program that we were doing. And so we were discovering a great thing for us is to be able to go into some of these areas and to do that education show before the Japan groups actually got there. So there was a contrast, too, of understanding, but still for us to educate people about what taiko is all about. We found that not only educating students in schools or teachers, too, but naturally, as we grew, funders didn't understand who we were. And so to educate the funders, about us being a cultural art form coming from the very specific community, ethnic community, that we are as legitimate, say, as the symphony or the ballet or any other traditional Western art form in that way.
Can I insert here that our first funding opportunity was actually here in San Jose, and it was called the Fine Arts Commission. And so already it's the big five. We're talking about the opera, the theater, the ballet, the symphony. So this is before multicultural arts became like a buzzword. And so as we're entering this time, and they're trying to slot us in. So are you music? Are you dance? Are you theater? What are you? And we go, yes, all of the above. And for the first few years, we would not receive funding. There was not an understanding. And it was just also the beginning of multicultural arts starting to become visible. But even there required a lot of education. And then I think also hindsight, we couldn't speak about cultural art forms in diaspora. Being influenced by home country and what has been created here as the expression? Is it like you're not doing the real art form from Japan? Also, what are you doing? And hearing people, at the lobby after we complete a performance, oh, we really enjoy it. Oh, I'm glad you enjoy. You speak great English. So we got a lot of that stereotype, and also the branding of like, oh, our drumming is from ancient Japan. So there was a lot of misinformation, and that was not really clear for, I would say, for a few decades, because it required more education and also more clarity of how to present from ourselves. What is it?
Yeah. When you speak about this cultural education, both sort of educating the society at large, but even educating ourselves who grown up maybe have not had access to our own cultural heritage and information. That's definitely a case for myself. And therefore, for so many cultural arts organizations, especially ones who started at that time, like organizing, advocacy, activism, very much was intertwined within arts and culture, right? They're inseparable. And you talked about that in the beginning 1970s. There's so many young people you were interacting around that time were not only grappling with the question of identity and at the same time, very much involved in activism and community organizing. Yes, go ahead.
I'm going to insert also that we were also learning for the first time about our own history. Yes. So we're talking about incarceration, Japanese Americans, our parents, our families, so everything is as we're developing something to be our expression, we're also still learning about our history and how does that come into play with, this is a legitimate art form. No other, taiko from Japan could not really speak on our behalf. The taiko that we were doing.
How would you describe, and to go back to that organizing activism piece a little bit, San Jose Taiko obviously is an arts and cultural group. Describe your journey a little bit of the being in, maybe partnering with non-arts and culture, or just sort of being involved in advocacy, organizing, activism, like that particular journey of both of you in San Jose Taiko.
Just for me, I became to realize that playing taiko was our musical voice from the Japanese community that I never had before. And because we were being asked to play at events and things, and it was always, can you start the event, be the first thing, just to call the people in, whether it's a festival or something. And so we became the calling instrument just to bring people together and just to help organize people in a way, or just bring them all together just to attract what was going on.
We're starting.
Yes, kind of thing. Yeah, we're starting, and please come in, type of thing. But so with that, we realized that taiko is really a very powerful instrument in that way. It brings people together, not only us as musicians, as taiko players, but also brings people together in our community. And how can we also bring people together in a larger community? So I felt it was really important to begin work not just in developing what we're doing. We were very active in trying to not just develop San Jose Taiko, but taiko as an art form nationally. And so just helping to spread, helping other groups start in different places, organizing conferences and classes and different things. By just it was important for us that we saw other groups, getting help in whatever way they wanted or needed in order to start their own taiko groups.
Sharing resources.
Yeah, we shared all our resources, how we made our drums. We didn't necessarily share our music, but we shared our fundamental style, because we felt it was really important groups be unique and different and on their own musically. And so I always say, if everyone copied what we did, or if we all copied San Francisco Taiko, the first group, it would be kind of a boring art form. So the creativity of it all was that everyone was starting to do their own thing, basically. And that's how Taiko really kind of grew real quickly. But within the multicultural sense, I think since we're becoming popular as an art form and we're able to get the recognition, especially here in San Jose, within the arts community, it was important that we help other arts organizations here. So getting involved in the multicultural arts scene here was kind of critical for us, and how we supported what was going on in different ways. So for me to partner with people like Raul Lozano and Tamara Alvarado to start the Multicultural Arts Leadership Institute, the MALI program, just being asked to serve on the School of Arts and Culture board. Actually, I was on the committee that helped kind of initiate the school, because initially the organization that was running Mexican Heritage Plaza had to close down, so this site was kind of sitting dormant for a bit. And I was on a community committee to help reactivate the center, and then got asked to sit on the board for the school, and then actually sat on the board for 10 years, basically, and chaired the board for a couple of those years. So it was kind of, I felt really important to be involved in other communities, especially in the larger multicultural arts community, in order to support as many other people as possible. Through our performances, we're starting to see that it was also important for us to do collaborations. And so we started to think about who can we work with that we really, we could learn from them, and hopefully we could teach them what we're doing too, but come up with something totally new and different and unique. And so a lot of those collaborative projects really helped us cross over audiences to different ways. So working with San Jose Rep Theater Company, even the San Jose Symphony, the ballet a little bit, but especially within the multicultural arts community. And I know Maitili is one of the artists you can be talking to soon, but we collaborated with her in the early 90s, and just starting, early on for us, and just doing those collaborations were just amazing experiences for us that we learned a lot. And more importantly is that I think we broadened all of our audiences, because everyone got to see something different, and it started to cross over in different ways.
Yeah. Wow. As you're sharing the expansive stories of artistic development, multicultural solidarity building, building a national voice for Taiko, being such a powerful instrument to call people, beginning of conferences and other settings, organizing and so forth. Wondering if you could share a couple of stories, highlight stories. So I remember, where there just spanning the last 50 years, what are some memories, specific memories that come to you that you would like to share right now?
I'll start with the very first memory, and that is perhaps one of our first performances. I mean, it was, our music was very, very simple. It's like taking several rhythm patterns and repeating them over and over, because we had no style or anything. Yet we were asked to come out and play for a picnic for Issei, first-generation Japanese from Japan, our immigrant grandparents. And there was a gathering here in San Jose Park, and the seniors sitting down, and we're right there in this amphitheater outdoors, and we are shabby looking because we're talking about the 70s, long hair, and our drums aren't like really polished yet. We're still making them, and very rough looking. And our music and sound was still rough looking, sounded rough. However, we played with a lot of heart. There was so much commitment and just pouring our hearts into it. I mean, that's what I think brought all of us together, to be able to play the drum, but here to play it in front of our senior citizens from Japan, Grandma, Grandpa, and hereafter with tears in their eyes, say, I'm so proud that you have found our culture. And I am so happy to hear that. Of course, it was instantly, that's why we're playing taiko. To hear that kind of response and that connection was certainly like a pivotal moment of, authenticating what we were doing.
An aha moment. You just mentioned, that's what we're playing taiko. Roy, I'm wondering if you, when you look back in your memories, was there aha moment? You shared so many pathways, right? Is there an aha moment that is coming to you now that you'd like to share?
We early on, there was a group called Ondekoza that was coming from Japan to play, and they were a professional ensemble that was touring the country, U.S. And so we were able to meet them, and actually they came to San Jose in the mid-'70s, and we were able to connect. So this is very early on for us too. And so we befriended the members of the group, and especially the leader of the organization. And so he eventually asked if we would be interested to take San Jose Taiko to go to Japan to tour with Ondekoza in Japan. And so we said, sure, that's a great opportunity for us. But we were wondering, wow, this is, Ondekoza is very Japanese in a way. And actually, we knew we were kind of different. But Mr. Dan, the leader, he understood that, I believe. He knew that we don't look like them. We don't sound like them. And so it was his interest to really introduce us to Japan. And so we were afraid about that.
Yeah, we were concerned. However, Mr. Dern, who really said, you guys are doing something different, and acknowledging that and saying that your expression is so joyful. It's California sunshine. And we would like to highlight that by inviting you to come to Japan. And we said that if we come to Japan, it's really important that we bring our oak wine barrels, that we bring our own drums, because we want to show there is a difference and that it's not the Japanese taiko drum from Japan. So he invited us, and we also took our drums, and again, it was kind of like an educational moment for the Japanese audience. And there in the lobby too, you got this, that was really wonderful. And then we respond in English. They were just so surprised, but they couldn't tell the difference in our rhythms and our music. And so it was that moment coming home. What was that experience all about? Asking members, those who went to Japan, what was that experience about? And basically, coming back home, said, we do have something different. And?
Well, yeah, so we realized that even though, we're touring with this professional Japanese taiko ensemble, as a group, that we really also had our own sound and style and form and the way we played taiko, what was important for us. And so that really shifted our thinking that we were just more than a community group, that we could become our own professional ensemble and start that here in the United States as one of the first professional taiko ensembles here. And that really launched our journey on that path, basically, to really think about what would it take to start to do tours on our own, and what would it take to really kind of do different things in that way, funding-wise, or just, whatever it took. After that trip, Mr. Dan, he was touring in the U.S. again, and he was going to do a performance at Carnegie Hall. And so he invited us to join him at Carnegie Hall. So for us to go there and to also kind of launch our taiko statement on the East Coast of, the country here at Carnegie Hall was just an amazing opportunity too.
supported with legitimizing.
Yeah, affirmation of self, affirmation of community, affirmation of cultural expression, affirmation of professionalism on stage, affirmation by the funders, affirmation by presenters. What a legacy. When you reflect on your 5 decades of legacy, what do you hope that the next generation of cultural leaders will carry forward?
What they would look forward to, or what the
What do you hope that they would carry forward?
will carry forward. Okay.
Yeah.
My big hope is they don't give up, they don't stop, and that there's still so much more to do, and so they're not only on their creative form and their within their style and artistic form, but just as within our own communities, just to make the statements, and especially with funders and different organizations in that way. When we first started to get into funding from the California Arts Council, they didn't quite get us either at that time. But, things are starting to slowly change there. And even with the National Endowment for the Arts at first, they didn't know who we were. They put us into this lump category of folk and traditional arts. And we didn't quite feel we were in that category, but, we were in that category also, because they were always questioning us, well, your root culture is from Japan, but your music is not. So, what does that mean? And so actually when we got the NEA National Heritage Fellowship, it was, in a way, we felt we were finally legitimate in a way within their view. And we also saw them, because we got into some of the earlier advancement programs for just organizational management, and struggled with how we operated as an organization, especially a organization of color, versus how the more like the ballet or the symphony operates, and that's what they wanted us to do. And trying to say that's community organizations are not going to work in that same way. So you have to understand what we're doing is more the way the smaller organization will actually probably function. So they started to shift their thinking finally. And so it was great to kind of see that we perhaps helped influence some of that funding changes or attitude change, I guess more importantly to think about.
Maybe cultural awareness.
Yeah.
For them to be a lot more open to understanding the different cultures and the expressions. I think that's what we will try to open the doors for.
Yeah, so I feel within my current position with the California Arts Council as a council member, I continue that kind of work because I feel it's still important that there's a voice. And so I feel that everyone needs to step up to be that voice too in their own way. So there needs to be many voices, not just one or two.
I'll add to voice. What do we want the next generation to be passing on? Definitely history. Definitely the origins of taiko, not only in Japan, but definitely how it got here from what we started and the first 3 taiko groups. Actually, the first 3 out of the 3, 2 of them, including us, came out of Buddhist temple. And it was actually through the Buddhist temples that were very instrumental in disseminating and sharing, because there's that ripple connection, throughout the nation. And it was the development of taiko groups in the temples first. Let's do the same thing as Senshin in Los Angeles, and same thing in San Jose, from the temple, what they did with the community. We felt that that people have to acknowledge it did come from the Japanese American communities, that core history, but how it's so important to weave the entire artistic expression, of course, going to Japan, but how it proliferated, how it got more popular, definitely comes from an American experience.
It's important to say also that the first street taiko groups here in North America started in what's now the three remaining critical Japan towns. And so it's interesting that we all started, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Tokyo, and San Jose, Japantown. We were the first three, but those are three main Japan towns here in the U.S. that are remaining.
Yes. Holding on to our communities. Before we get to the last couple of questions about legacy, I do want to ask Roy specifically about serving on the California Arts Council. As a cultural artist that has this opportunity to serve on the leadership of California Arts Council, what does it mean for you to be there? What do you see as your role to be a council member? And what is your message for, other cultural artists?
Well,
yeah.
Actually, we were getting funding from the California Arts Council for a number of years, but to be honest, I never really understood the organizational structure of it. So how the council really functions in regards to the staff, because we always deal with the staff at the CAC and actually for your grants or whatever. But I was asked to, and it wasn't even on my radar or thinking about being on the council, but I was asked would I would even consider to submit my name to be a council member. Then I realized, I started to look at, how do council members even get appointed? Well, you do have to apply. There's an application form. And then there's actually, you need to be recommended. There's 11 positions. 9 of them are appointees by the governor. 2 are outside. One is appointed by the state senate, and the other one is appointed by the speaker of the house, the assembly. So my appointment came through Robert Reeves, the speaker of the assembly, the state assembly. And so, and he was looking for someone actually to kind of represent sort of the South Bay, his district, where he's more to the south here. But he really wanted someone of color to represent the communities and the artists that are not represented. So I really appreciated that he was looking for that. Still, when I put my name in an application, I was thinking there must be all kinds of people wanting this job here, no matter, coming from all over the place, because it's not just a regional application, it's statewide. And so I'll put my name in, but chances are pretty slim. So, but then I got the call saying, after a short interview, that's one reason I didn't think I would get in. The staff interviewed me, and that interview was not very long, and they only asked a few questions. And so I thought, well, I think I kind of blew this interview because they just ended it so quickly. And so then I got the call saying, well, we'd like to appoint you to, the speaker would like to appoint you to this position. And so it was to be recognized in that way was such a huge honor, I felt. But then also I felt it's not just an honor, but now it's a huge responsibility. And so because he's asking for kind of a big agenda. He wants actually the multicultural voice to be very prominent. He wants it, the underserved communities to be represented, the people of those communities to be represented within the arts community. And, that funding try to go more into those areas and, just the kind of work that I've been doing just to try to amplify it, outside of what I've done here in San Jose or the county to now at the state level. And so it was a big learning curve for me at first in order to understand how I could best sit on the council and be effective with the other council members who are actually all appointees also with different backgrounds. Not all of them are actual working artists, which, I thought was interesting too. A lot of them everyone's actually a very big art supporter or patron. But in order to work with this group of people who have various ideas and ways of how they think how the arts should be run or funded, versus, what's important for them versus what's important for what I've done. Again, I feel I'm just one voice, but I think many voices is the way to get things done. So when I go out to meet people and stuff, they say, wow, it's cool that you're there. And I say, well, you got to step up, whether it's locally, just within your city or your neighborhood even, but you need to all speak up because it's not going to happen otherwise. And there's opportunities there. I'm just amazed that the opportunities can happen for you. At the state level, I'm sitting on the Equity Committee and the Strategic Frameworks Committee. And it's kind of great timing because actually equity is always important to make sure that voice is there, that within the guidelines of funding and everything else. But strategic frameworks is like the long-range plan for what the council may be doing for the next 7 years or so. And so just looking at trying to help frame, what kind of funding perhaps, what kind of programs are important, what's the key agenda items that the council needs to be looking at. I'm trying to help guide that process right now.
Thank you for that insight. Come back to you with further questions. As we're beginning to wrap up, I love for you to reflect on your legacy. And when you think back on the last 50 years and beyond, what are you most proud of? And what are you most proud of changing and transforming?
Because we've come to 50 plus years, often people think of, they've retired. And I like to bring in the word rewired. So rewiring what we already have at our core is not like leaving it all behind and moving on to something else, as retirement usually suggests. We wanted to really see how we can still continue our work. And so rewiring, and I think we really need more opportunities for community engagement. And to we're focusing on younger taiko players, collegiate taiko players that are only experiencing, just so much of the taiko experience, but they don't have the history or the background to really, if they want to continue, what are they representing? We want them to have that kind of background and very, very clear beginnings, history, even sharing style, to encourage them to keep on being creative. The other component is what part of this, I don't like to use the word legacy, but I say that in a way that I want to say what we have underscored as our work. It goes back to the very beginning, community. So community, creative artists who are aware about the art form, its background, its history, and also how to work together. So it is such, we can go in our separate channels, our silos of being successful taiko groups, but we're trying to, how do we share resource, share experience and stories so that we can really expand the possibilities of being more unified, to have a unified voice for certain things that we live and are confronted with. How does taiko show up? We want the next generation to be aware.
Yeah, and now so many cultural communities, so many individuals, and so many organizations have looked upon the San Jose Taiko model as models for their own communities. So same question for you, Roy, when you look back at legacy, what are you most proud of? What are you most proud of changing, transforming?
I guess for me is that, a cultural neighborhood art form could grow to become a national touring ensemble or an international touring ensemble. And, and highlighting your cultural work, your history, your family history, and your whole ethnic cultural background. But for what I guess what I'm really kind of proud of is that we decided at a point in our career that we wanted to step out of leadership. And so thinking about the transition of the next generation taking over, we didn't want to be in a situation where we had to step out because of health or whatever reasons, that we couldn't do it anymore. So we spent some serious time thinking about what transition of leadership in San Jose Taiko was going to be like. And so we did that in 2011. And it happened to be the year that we received our NEA Heritage Fellowship. So it was and it wasn't planned that way, but it just happened that was the way it turned out. And so it was a great launching pad for us, naturally, but also a great launching pad for San Jose Taiko. And we were able to find 2 leaders who stepped in and took over and doing an amazing job still to continue the organization. And doing even more stuff than we did before in different ways. And that was what we feel is kind of important, just programming wise, artistic programs, and the funding and things that they're doing. So with that, I guess is helping thinking about how that process, what we did, how can we share that better with other people, other organizations on their thinking of what succession means in leadership. Because so many of our peers in the art field, they're still there, doing it, which is great. But sometimes as artists, I think they still need to be there. As administrative leaders, I think they should maybe step back a little bit. And so that's I think what people need to think about. When do you step back, especially when you're? I feel. We never stopped the artistic side, the creative side. We're still doing that, and that's our passion still. But we're happy that we were able to let go of the admin side of things, so we could do even more on the creative side. And I feel more people need to think about that.
You are so right. As a CEO of Arts West, many of the cultural leaders have shared with me about whether it's elders, there's a interest and desire, increasing interest in stepping away, as well as next generation who have been part of the company for 30 plus years and are so ready to step up formally, and yet kind of confounded by what is the roadmap for cultural groups to do this work. Like you alluded before, administratively, we are not sifting up our belly, and so what does succession planning look like for our cultural sectors, for our multicultural groups? I will be talking to you off camera about doing some programs together to share the knowledge. All right, so as we're wrapping up, optional closing question. If you had to describe your journey in one word, what would that be?
Gosh. I'm going to say joy.
I think the word that comes forward for me is reflective. Just it's just always kind of thinking about what has gone on before me, and even think about what comes forward next. But that's
yeah. Thank you. As you know, this year's festival theme is Legacy of Liberation. So we really want to highlight for the cultural artists that have been part of our community for 5 decades. It's always been about liberation. Maybe we didn't even know it from the very beginning that's what it was. We were just grappling to, quote unquote, have fun. And being rooted in our culture to create new cultural expressions in a new land, new geography, new time, is an individual liberatory practice and a collective liberation that we share with our community. And a collective liberation to lift how our cultures have been perceived out of bondage. So it can be legitimized, respected, continue, and continue to evolve in the future, right? 50 years from now, Taiko may or may not be what it is today. And that's how culture survives and continues and thrives. I want to thank you, both of you, PJ and Roy, for the conversation today, for being the shoulders of giants that we stand on, for the inspiration that you are to so many of us in different cultures, for providing the roadmap and yet giving us the permission to be flexible with that roadmap, as you have been flexible with that roadmap along the way. So I really want to thank you for the conversation today.
Thank you very
Thank you very much.